Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ask the Expert webinar. Welcome to SAS Viya. My name is Thiago de Souza, and I will serve as your moderator for today's event. Now, I would like to take a moment to introduce our presenter, Stacy Seifus, Director of SAS Education. For more than 20 years, Stacy has helped learners gain valuable skills to understand and leverage data. Stacy and her team create learning assets and teach individuals to use SAS software. With all of that out of the way, why don't we turn things over to Stacy so we can get started. Stacy, please take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Thiago. I am really excited to be with all of you today. This is my favorite topic to discuss in my career right now. So to give a little background story as to why I'm so enthusiastic about introducing people to SAS Viya, it was several years ago where I was maybe a couple of weeks away from going to SAS Global Forum, which is kind of like our Innovate of years ago. And it was right before that trip that internally we decided, okay, we're going to make this big push for our new product. It's going to be called SAS Viya. And they asked me if I would help at the booth, in the big innovation or the hub where everyone kind of gathers to talk about Viya. And I felt like, okay, I know it's cloud-based. I know it's going to be really powerful. I know we're going to be processing data in memory. And I really wish I could go back and teach myself years ago what I know now about what Viya is, because it is so powerful, so efficient, not only in its processing, but also helping you as a developer or an analyst or a data scientist to work more efficiently with your own data. So again, I wish I could go back and teach myself what I know now, but I can't. So as a compromise, I love explaining it to others, to you all. So I hope I can share with you some of the knowledge, the insights, the benefits of Viya, and that you'll come away maybe as enthusiastic as me, or just a touch a little bit. All right, so I'm going to jump right in and just share my screen and give you a little taste of kind of what the platform is, a little bit of the technical details, and then we're just going to demo for the rest of the hour and do a little Q&A at the end too. That's my plan. All right, give me just a second to share my screen. And I'll get this in play mode. Let me make sure everything's showing up okay. All right, let's do this. Okay. So again, many of you may be coming from kind of different backgrounds. Maybe you're using SAS 9 and considering a move to SAS Viya. Maybe you've already implemented SAS Viya and you're kind of looking to get a better idea of what it offers you. Regardless of why you're here, you made a great choice, right? I hope that you learned something here about how SAS Viya can make your life, your business life better. So we realize that in the world of data science, ultimately, we're always trying to get from question to decision in the most efficient way, right? So regardless of what your question may be, that data to decision journey can be complicated, right? And there's a lot of different pieces and parts that go into making an effective, accurate decision. So what we do, or what I'm going to talk about in my presentation, is follow what we like to call the analytics life cycle. And by this, we recognize that there's kind of some main steps that you'll go through in your process from data to decision, typically starting with the managed data aspect of things where you need to access, prepare your data. And then you go into, here it says develop models, but I'm going to broaden that a little bit to just be involve, the analytics of your data, whether it's just building dashboards and reports, or it is AI and ML models that you want to create. And then a third step, deploying the insights, sharing them however you might want to. It could be just distributing results in Microsoft applications that your colleagues and coworkers are most comfortable with. Or it could be building complex models that you want to deploy and maybe access through APIs or web apps or whatever it may be. So really, there's a variety of, tasks and complexity that are part of this analytics lifecycle. And your role in the analytics lifecycle may differ, right? You may be just focused on that managed data phase, or you may kind of oversee the entire process. So regardless of your role, the beautiful thing about Viya is it provides this unified collection of applications and programming languages that will enable you to kind of use whatever subset of tools that you need for your job, but then seamlessly share and collaborate with others. And so that's what I want to provide today, is this tour of the applications in SAS Viya that fulfill or help you fulfill this process in the analytics lifecycle. Okay, so I would like to go into a little bit of terminology regarding the platform itself, because these are some terms that I will be using as we go through the demonstrations. So in the Viya architecture, the beautiful thing is, well, with SAS, we've always played nicely with others, right? We want to allow everyone to get to whatever data you have. And so your data can come from relational databases, the cloud, folder paths, Hadoop, streaming data, and more. Now, this access is done primarily through two servers. Well, the first one we call the SAS Compute Server, and the second is SAS Cloud Analytics Services, or SAS. I'm going to discuss each just at a high level. So the compute server is, in the SAS Viya platform, this is what enables you to execute traditional SAS code. The compute server is pretty much the same, very similar to the SAS 9 workspace server. So the compute server is what you will use for just kind of your standard SAS programs, maybe legacy programs that you're bringing from SAS 9. So you can still use the compute server to run your traditional SAS code with little to no modifications. You can also do some integration with Python and R. But if that's all that Viya was, it wouldn't be a great sell over SAS 9. What we add to it and the platform is Cloud Analytics Services. So CAS, for short, enables you to use a variety of programming languages very seamlessly, including not only SAS, but Python, R, Lua, Java, just to process your data in memory in parallel. CAS is also the workhorse behind the applications for creating dashboards, performing machine learning, text analytics, forecasting, you name it. CAS also is what supports our industry-specific solutions. So this could be, you've heard of solutions such as SAS Anti-Money Laundering, SAS Model Risk Manager, Customer Intelligence 360, and many more. And finally, with CAS, you can create custom applications for your organization and using the CAS server and REST APIs. So between these two servers, this is what provides the unique analytic engine that Viya gives us. And no matter what your job role is, your skill level, your programming languages, you have the tool to, again, go through this analytics lifecycle, going from question to decision. So as I go through our demonstration, I'm going to use a consistent scenario here to tell a story and take us through this process. So imagine you are a banking data analyst, okay? And your job is to look at home equity loans in particular. So home equity loans is where, individuals provide the value of their home as collateral and then borrow money against that value. And we want to improve our loan approval decisions. So we have some historical data that allows us to see, okay, well, based on application inputs, what was the outcome of the loan? Was it paid in full or did it default? So we want to take that historical data that we have, learn from it, and use it to predict outcomes in the future. So evaluate past loan performance is one thing we want to do. Estimate the likelihood of repayment for future loans, and leverage whatever the models that we build for those future applications. So this is the data that will be the focus of the demonstrations I go through the rest of the hour. So there you have it. All right, well, let's jump into Viya. Let me get everything set up. Okay. So here I am on the SAS landing page that just gives me a launch point to connect to some of the core applications. Certainly I can use these tiles to start things off, but I can also use the applications menu to select any of these tools. Now, I wish I had time to go through every single one in great detail. I don't. So I'm going to hit the core ones. We'll start with manage data. So obviously, the first thing is we need access to data, right? We've got to figure out, where is this home equity table? How do I get it into CAS or make it available in CAS so that I can process it going forward? There are a few different ways that you can make data available in CAS. Now, I'm actually going to switch back over to SAS Studio. I'll come to talk about SAS Studio a little bit more later, but this is really our programming tool. And so just want to show you that we can get data into CAS through SAS code. So I'm not going to go through all of this code right now, but imagine really what it does is it just this code creates a simple SAS data set. And then I use this step right here called proc cas util. And then I'm going to highlight this one line right here. It's probably pretty intuitive what it's doing just by reading it. It is loading the SAS data set, home_equity, and it's loading to what we call a CAS lib. So if you're familiar with, kind of general SAS programming language or data behavior, you know that we pretty much provide data access through libraries. Well, the analogous term for CAS is a CAS lib. So while we access data for the compute server still through libraries, when we're talking about CAS, we access through CAS lib. So a CAS lib not only allows you to connect to physical data, but it also allows you to load data into memory for processing in CAS. So that's what this statement does here, is basically load that SAS table into a CAS lib named CAS user and makes it available as an in-memory table. So I've run this program before. I'm going to come back over to Data Explorer where I was, Manage Data. And that's where I see my in-memory tables that are available, customer and home equity, home_equity. So I can click on that table and I get to see a little preview of just the columns and their attributes, as well as my sample data. So the bad column here is just a 0 or 1 flag. I always forget. I think 0 means the loan defaulted and 1 means it was paid off. So there's a little preview there. But now what if my data is coming from a different source? For example, what if I have something just lives on my machine in Excel? No problem. I can go to the Import Data tab, select Local Files. I'm going to choose this mortgage rates.excel file and open it. And there's a few options I can use to customize that import, but I'm going to leave those as is and just indicate that I want the in-memory table that I'm going to produce for use in CAS to be saved in CAS user. That's like my own personal CAS lib. And I'll go ahead and click OK. If that table exists, I'll replace it and import the item. Give it just a quick second. There you go. Table was successfully imported. And back over here in sources, I'm going to expand CAS shared default, go to CAS user, and there you have it. The cute little table with the lightning bolt icon indicates that it's the in-memory table ready to go for processing in other applications. Now, what if you have data sources that live kind of outside of the SAS ecosystem? So you've got database tables, something from cloud providers. You've got all sorts of connectors that enable us to utilize data from these different resources. So lots and lots of choices. Now, I've already set up a connection to an Oracle database. So I'm going to close here and just show you this CAS lib here, my ORCL. I'm going to edit that connection just so you can see that I've just provided a name for the CAS lib. I've indicated it's global, so it can be shared among all of the different applications in Viya. Now, for this particular type of data source, I need to provide a path, a schema, and authentication, username and password. So depending on your what data you're trying to access, you can use this handy little connection documentation link to go straight to our help documentation and figure out what information you need to provide to establish that connection. So if I come over to my ORCL, I have 3 Oracle tables that are available. And if I want to load any of these into memory so that I can process them later in other applications, I can just simply right-click, load into memory, and there you have it. There was the original, kind of the physical data source for country lookup, and then the lightning bolt, meaning the CAS table. Okay, so that's step 1, is just getting connected to our data. Well, now I want to learn a little bit more about this home equity data in particular. So the next step that I think we would follow in the analytics lifecycle would be to go to Discover Information Assets, which opens an application we call in SAS Information Catalog. I'll get here to the home screen here for this application. So Information Catalog, I think, is a very appropriate name because it's a way for us to catalog and search all of our assets in this SAS environment. So you notice the catalog at a glance quickly just gives us an idea. What are the assets that we have? We have data sets, we have reports, we have a studio flow that we'll see later. So from here, what we can do is search for things, right? So let's say I want to see all of the assets that have the word water associated with it. And a quick search gives me, these are CAS tables. They haven't been loaded into memory yet, but they have water, the word water in them. I also have a report. Easy. Okay, that's great. What if I search for something like property? And you'll notice that, well, water cluster shows up, but property isn't in part of the name. But if I click on it, I can see, well, it looks like there's actually a column in that data source named property. So it dives deeper than just the name of the asset itself. So I'm going to go back to Catalog Home, and there's that home equity table that we were just looking at. Now I've, just to save some time, analyzed this table, and what Information Catalog shows me is a pretty solid just preview of what this data is all about, right? And I can use this to kind of scope what is it that I'm looking at and what might be my next steps in the analytics lifecycle. So in the Overview tab, we have a little summary of, is there any potentially private information in this table? And this one just has some candidate values. If I had something like name, age, gender, address, those would be flagged as potentially either sensitive or private. A basic summary of the data is provided as well. And then here we can see across the top, completeness gives us information about how many missing values we have within the data, just the general size, and so on. So a good profile of what we're looking at here in the data. I like coming over to column analysis to start to investigate a little bit deeper. Okay, well, here's this bad column. I can see there are two distinct values. Over in the properties on the right, I get an idea of the distribution, which is just simply 0, 1 values. Some basic statistics, which is helpful as well. If I choose another column, for example, let me go to mortgage due, and it gives me just a little box and whisker plot, again, to get an idea of the distribution. And with this column highlighted, I can see that it actually is correlated, strongly correlated with value and job. Okay, so there's just some basic exploration that I can do here in Information Catalog to learn a little bit more. Let me show you one other option. I'm going to open the customer, search for the customer table if I can spell it correctly. There we go. Oh, I haven't analyzed this one. So let me go ahead and click Analyze and give it a moment to load. So it'll just take a moment and I'll explain why I'm going to bring this up here. One reason is that if you have text, if you have columns within your data that have long form text, so comments is a common thing that you might want to look. You can actually dive a little bit deeper into those comments and get an idea of the sentiment. So are they positive? Are they potentially neutral, negative? What's going on with those comments? So while it's going, let me give it just a second. I thought I had this one finished, but I guess I didn't. Oh, actually, you know what? I can show you one other thing too. So while we're waiting, I'll just mention that you can also utilize the status if you want to, for example, indicate that a table has been approved, flagged, if there's a warning associated with it. So again, it's a good way to kind of monitor these data sources and just determine, okay, how potentially, what do I need to do with them maybe in the future? All right, my analysis is done. I'll go ahead and view that analysis. And in the sample data, you can see that over here there is this column called verbatims. And it looks like, we have some English, but we also have some Spanish in here. So if I go back over to the Overview tab, you can see that it identifies that there are multiple languages included here. And under Column Analysis, I'm going to go straight to verbatims. There you go. You get a little keyword cloud. There's that sentiment analysis, positive, negative, neutral, at least the comments that we're able to identify. So there's some good information we can gather here from Information Catalog. All right, so now we learned a little bit about home equity, right? What is the next step? So my next step is going to be to explore that data. I'm going to use the application SAS Visual Analytics that can be launched by selecting Explore and Visualize. So this is our interactive reporting and dashboard building tool. I love visual analytics. So what I'm going to do, again, just kind of because of time here and our tour, we are going to open an existing report that I've created earlier. And I might show you a few little steps as to how it was built, but I'd like you to see the final result so you can kind of see what's possible. So when I open Visual Analytics, this report that was pre-built, right now I'm in editing mode, so I can make changes to it. On the left side, I see the panel that allows me to see, allows me to view what we call the data items. So basically, these are the columns from that home equity table that we've looked at earlier, but they are divided into categories. So we've got a group named category that are primarily our character columns, date columns, and anything that we've designated that should be treated as a category. So for example, the loan status code, even though technically it is a number 0 and 1, I've specified that it should be treated as a category, not a measure. I've identified the state column as a geography variable, which makes it very easy to build maps. And then I have several other measures here as well. So continuous numeric values that we can use in our calculations, our aggregations for the report, and so on. So we've got the data panel, we've got objects, so the type of components that we can add to our report. And I think I'll just highlight those two for now. But let's see what this report looks like. Okay, so I am going to just show you the first page, which is loan data. So I really just wanted to take a peek at the data itself in a way that I could, for example, sort rows. Okay, just clicking on the column headers allows me to sort quickly all of these rows. I added a few just visual indicators, in this case, just a little bar or a heat map to try and identify, the distribution of those values. So that's the data, nothing terribly exciting there. But the next page I created was called Loan Exploration. So in this page, I have just a little donut chart here that gives me the frequency of loan status. So about 80% of the loans are current, about 20% defaulted. Distribution of the frequency of loan amount. Actually, let me take that off there so we can look at everything. There we go. Frequency of loan application by loan application date. This period of time was when interest rates were decreasing quite a bit. So home equity loans were not as popular as refinancing. And then a little bar chart. Okay. Now, all of these graphs at this point reflect the entire data set, but I've added this interactive little button bar in the upper left corner that allows me to choose on a region and then dynamically filter the data to see those visualizations updated. It's pretty cool. What else did I have here? Loans by state, okay? So I mentioned by defining state as a geography data item, made it very easy to build a map that would represent, in this case, the size of the bubble here is the number, the count, frequency count of loan applications by state. And the color scale indicates the average amount of the loan request. Looks like it's fairly consistent throughout the US, with maybe one exception up here in Vermont. But on the left side here, I have the frequency of loans by region. I've connected these two visualizations with this simple little action item, okay? So in the panel on the right, this is where we have the ability to customize the actual objects within the report. Just a quick little tour. The first item is options. So this is where you can just have a great time with, let me click the map here just to get a little more options here. So this is where you can customize everything about the appearance of whatever that item is in the report. Okay, I'm not going to change anything here, but just want to point out that's what it is. Data roles, this is where you determine which of the data items are participating in that particular object and how they will be utilized. And then, of course, we have the actions. So I'm just going to go that far with the right panel here. But this chart, in this case, is linked directly to the map. So what does that mean? Well, my graph is built as a hierarchy, which means that each of these bars I can click on to zoom in. And as I zoom in on that particular region, south, then it shows me each of the divisions. And you can see that the map zoomed in as well. And I'll go one step further into South Atlantic, and there you go. So because of that link, that connection between these two objects in the report, then what I do in one is reflected in the other. Pretty cool. So that's loan outcomes by state. Loans by state. Now, the final thing that I did is I created what's called loan outcome explanation. And this is really one of my favorite things in visual analytics is the ability to just quickly start to delve into that world of predictive modeling. So I know I want to use my data to try and predict what a future loan outcome will be based on the inputs that we have from the application. So in this quick explanation, it asks, what factors are most related to loan status code? Okay, now I can start to dive in and be future looking rather than just reflective historical looking. So I can see that the most influential factor seems to be the debt to income ratio, then number of delinquent credit lines and the value of current property and so on. So this report was built pretty easily, okay, just by dragging and dropping data items into the canvas. Now, let's see, I've got a few more minutes that I can spend here in visual analytics. So let me show you how some of this is done from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and just close this report. I won't save it. And I'm going to create a new report. I'm going to go ahead and add the data, which specifically I want to use that home equity table from CAS user. So these are the data sources that we loaded previously in SAS Data Explorer, and click add. Okay, so there you go. There's my data items based on category and measure. There's a few things that I need to kind of prepare over here in the data items to get them ready for the visualizations. So here we see that loan status was identified as a measure. This is that binary 0-1 outcome. Rather than a measure, I instead want to treat it as a category. So I'm just going to change it to category. I'm going to leave it as just 0 and 1, but one thing that you can do is right click and create what's called a new custom category, allowing you to assign more descriptive labels. So current and default or paid and default rather than just 0, 1. What else do I want to do? Oops, let me come back to data here. The loan application date. I want to change the format so that rather than showing or aggregating my visualizations by day, month, year, I just want to group things by month and year. So I'm going to change the format. So 3-letter month, 4-digit year, okay. And state, we see that state right now is just a just a category item. Instead, I want to make this a geography data item. So to do that, I just change the classification. I have to identify how do we map the values in the data to a geographic region. And had I kind of pointed this out earlier, I would have indicated or showed you that the values are the full US state names. And so I'm just going to select that name or code context. It maps 100% of those values. And okay, so now I have a geography data item. The other thing I'm going to do quickly here is change the aggregation value for our measures. So if I hover over the first measure here, we can see that the aggregation is a sum. So that means when I build a visualization and we're kind of combining multiple loans to show, the length of a bar or something on that chart, like a line plot. Do I want that measure to be the sum of the age of the oldest credit lines? That doesn't make sense. An average would make more sense in this scenario. So I'm going to change the aggregation for actually all of these measures with the exception of frequency, just by selecting all of them and changing the aggregation to average. Okay. So clearly there's a lot that you can do over here in this data panel, but we've just scratched the surface to prepare a few things so that we can build some of these visualizations. So how do I create, for example, that one page that had the donut chart and the histogram and the bar chart? Well, it's as easy as this. I'm going to choose a data item. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to click off of that. Collapse it here. I'm going to choose loan status and just drag it onto the canvas. Easy. You'll notice the tooltip indicates what's called an auto chart that tells me, all right, VA says, I'm just going to build the best chart that I think I can provide given the data values in that data item. So it gives me a bar chart, which is decent, right? It's accurate. The frequency represents the length of the bars with my 0 and 1 values. But if I choose this little menu right here, it gives me other options here. So I can change that bar chart to something else. I'll change it to a pie chart. There you go. And this is where I can come over to the panel on the right and have fun with the options to customize the display. I won't go crazy here, but I'll add, how about % of total values, and I'll increase that font size to maybe 16. That looks good. Okay. So there you go. There's the first visualization. What are some of the other data items that we looked at? How about amount of loan request? I'm just going to drag that to the right side of the canvas. And there's the histogram. I'll leave it as it is. That looks pretty good. Nice distribution of the loan request values. Then there was the loan application date. We changed that format so that it was grouped. The data will be grouped by month and year. I'll drag that to the lower right portion of the canvas, and automatically a line plot is built. So all of those were auto charts, right? Just letting Visual Analytics pick what it thought was the best representation of that data. But what if I know I want to put a bar chart in this lower left corner? Well, then I can use the objects pane to take the bar chart object and drag it to the position on the canvas where I want it. Perfect. And then at this point, I just need to assign the data. So I'll go ahead and make my category job. I'll take out the frequency measure and add instead, let's see, what do I want to add? We'll do amount due on existing mortgage and value of current property, and apply and close. So there's that bar chart. Using the options over here, I'll make this a vertical bar chart. Lovely. And then remember that interactive button bar. How do I add that? Easy. From the data panel, we have 4 different regions. I can just right click on that and add it as what's called a page control. And those buttons automatically will filter everything on the page based on the value of region, right? Pretty easy. The last thing I'll show you in Visual Analytics was how to do that automated explanation, right? The start of a predictive model to figure out what factors are most influential of the loan outcome. To do that, just right click on loan status. I'm going to explain this variable on a new page. That is literally all it takes. Isn't that beautiful? So from there, I can get a decent idea of, okay, I want to build a little more complex model to figure out, okay, are all of those factors still the most influential in our outcome? And how can we use those to build a probability of outcome that we could use for future loan applications? So there's a little bit of Visual Analytics. All right, so where do we go from here? My next step in the analytics lifecycle is going to take us to develop code and flows. When I click develop code and flows, this launches SAS Studio. So SAS Studio is really kind of the application for our developers, for the power users who are programmers or who need to do more elaborate data preparation. So with SAS Studio, I kind of divide it into two different main functionalities that you can take advantage of. Number one is, again, just simply programming, coding. The other is building visual pipelines, or what we call flows, allowing you to use that low code, no code approach to prepare and investigate, or just, to prepare your data. So I'm going to show you a little bit of both of those aspects of SAS Studio. Let's start with code. So if you are a programmer, I hope you find it very comforting that really this is going to look pretty familiar, likely to other applications that you may have been using, whether it's SAS Studio in SAS 9, maybe even the windowing environment, or possibly even Enterprise Guide. Ultimately, you have the main things that you need to interactively develop your code. So I'm going to just start with clicking Program in SAS, and you'll notice a new tab opens. And I can just type whatever I want. Data new, set SAS help dot class, ratio equal height divided by weight, and run. Whatever code you want, right? The syntax is the same. Now, when I submit this, this is where it's really important to remember the two servers that we have access to in the Viya environment. There's the compute server and CAS. Up until now, the applications that we've seen, so Data Explorer, Information Catalog, and Visual Analytics, all are utilizing CAS behind the scenes. SAS Studio is the one where you have access to perform actions on either the compute server or CAS. The code that I just ran on the compute server, okay? But I also can run code in CAS, either way. I won't go that in depth to that aspect of the programming in SAS Studio, but just know that that is possible. Over on the right, the left side in the Explorer, this is where you have access to files. In other words, programs or other assets that you may need to reference in SAS Studio. This maps to a particular, this is kind of the mapped, why am I losing my words here? Just the operating system, or wherever your SAS server is running, this is kind of the file system that you have access to. Now, let's say that you've got something on your local machine that you may want to use in SAS Studio, whether it's code, whether it's data. You can simply select a folder under Files and then use the Upload button to select anything on your local machine, bring it into SAS Studio for processing. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of that, cancel out of this. So I can, for example, open an existing SAS program. I'll do something like printsample.sas. And this is just, again, kind of standard SAS code running on the compute server, procSQL, actually some macro language here that will either run a data step or proc survey select to gather a random sample and then print it, okay? So I can run that program, and as results are delivered, you can see there's the multiple tabs with the original program, the log, results, and if any output data is produced, then we can see that as well. So again, all the key things that you need for developing code. Not only can you do this with SAS programs, you can also do it with Python programs. So I can create a new Python editor and write my Python code here. Or if I have a .py program, I can open it. Notice I didn't have to have any kind of SASisms in here. There's no procs, there's no steps. It's just my Python code. And I can run that. What this little Python program does is it reads a comma delimited file from our support site, and it actually loads it into a SAS table named work.loan customers. But it works beautifully. So those are just, actually, let me highlight a couple more quick features here for programming that I love. And one is just the ability to right click on SAS programs, and you can do things like submit that program to execute behind the scenes. It's a long running program. You just want it to run in the background and you can continue your work doing other things. you can certainly do that. Or you can schedule or deploy that program as a job. If you're familiar with the stored process, what stored processes are in the SAS9 world, Viya jobs are essentially SAS9 or stored processes, but in the Viya world. Okay, so it's a way of storing code for execution in either here in SAS Studio or in other applications. Okay, so much more I'd love to say about coding, but now let's move on to the world of flows. I'd like to show you an existing flow so you can get an idea of what's possible. If I have any Enterprise Guide users out there, you'll probably look at this picture and think, hey, that looks a little bit like an Enterprise Guide project, and you would be correct. It is the idea that you are building a flow, in this case, that is a combination of what we call steps. So you can see that in this first flow, or what we call a swim lane, the top line here, we have a SAS program that creates a SAS data set that is then fed into a step where we actually compute new columns. The result of that step is then fed into a query that is used to join that result from compute loan to value with a new table, US_data. That query produces an in-memory home equity final table that's available in CAS. That lightning bolt always means a CAS table. The second swim lane does something similar, but does start with a Python program, creates a data table, adds column labels. Eventually, down here at the end, we get to export that result to an Excel file. So we can build these flows using steps. So SAS provides a long list of steps. And you can, again, if you're an Enterprise Guide user, you can think of most of these as corresponding to Enterprise Guide tasks. But these steps allow you to, let me show you one of them. Here, I'll highlight this and then maximize the window. So each step provides a point and click interface where you provide the necessary input for the modification that that step is making. So in this case, we're actually computing two new columns. We're replacing city with the proper case version of city, capital first letter for each word, and we're calculating loan to value. Okay, so we do all of that in the properties of the step down below. Same over here with the query. You have the ability to select columns, join tables, filter, sort, etc. Now, I wish I could show you how to do all of this. I can't, but I will go ahead and run that flow. And fingers crossed, if everything works successfully, you'll see green check marks all over the place, which is beautiful. I can go ahead and look at the complete generated code from that flow, which is pretty involved. It's got a lot of macro stuff in there. But I'm going to jump over to submitted code and results, where we can see the output for any of the steps that generated results, as well as output data. Now, the one thing that I want to highlight before we move on is these SAS provided steps are all fantastic. However, one of my favorite features is the ability to create your own custom steps. So remember the SAS program I showed earlier, this print sample program, that if I come over here to the code tab, basically what it does is it prints a sample of a data set, and I can provide input based on this first macro variable to say, I either want to print the first 20 rows or I want to generate a random sample of 20 rows. So I could modify this program if I know what I'm doing. I'm comfortable with the SAS macro language, or I understand the syntax here. Or you can create a custom step. And what a custom step does is provide a really elegant, simple form where a user can provide point and click input that ultimately modifies that same program behind the scenes, just using macro variables. It's really cool and really easy to build. So for example, in this designer, I have over here under options, the selection method. I either want to choose the first n rows or a random sample. Whichever of these two radio buttons I select will then populate or substitute in the SAS program the appropriate keyword so that the program will either generate the first n row sample or the random sample. Very cool feature. Love custom steps. All right, better move on from SAS Studio. So where are we in the analytics lifecycle? We've connected to our data. We did a little preliminary investigation. We used visual analytics to build an initial dashboard to explore our data and learn a little bit more about it. And then we could do some more advanced data preparation and analysis here in SAS Studio. The next step that I want to move on to is now going to be Model Studio. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to Manage Models. And I'm going to come over. Oh, I'm sorry, I went to the wrong place. Not Model Manager. I want to build a model. My bad. Model Studio. There we go. So I'm going to open a project that I created earlier where I built what are called a few pipelines to try and use the data that we have to predict the outcome of the loan status, either 0 or 1. So how is this done? Well, first thing you need to do when building a model in Model Studio is identify the data. So just quickly, I did select the home equity table. I identified bad as the target variable. And then you can go ahead through each of the other variables and indicate, do you want to reject a variable so it's excluded from the model, or identify if there's any other particular attribute or role that you want to assign. We can do all of that here. Then under pipelines, I've created 3 different pipelines. The first being based on a template. So this was called an advanced template based on a target. So I just indicated again that the target value is the outcome for bad, 0 or 1. And Model Studio built this lovely little pipeline that includes 6 different potential models. Now, after running this pipeline, then I can see under model comparison, well, which model was the best? If I right click and look at the results, it looks like the gradient boosting model was the best, and that's based on the KS statistic. So I'm going to go ahead and actually, you know what? Let me show you this right now. One of my favorite features is the ability to export that model to a PDF. So I can actually see a very detailed explanation of everything that that model provides. So 21 pages here, but lots of information. If you're a data scientist, this will all mean a lot to you. I don't have time to go through it, but oh, that one doesn't. Oh, I don't have the visuals in this one. That was probably a bad model to pick. But anyway, that PDF will give a lot of great information. Let me close the comparison results just to show you a couple of other methods that were used to build models. One was just asking SAS. You just build the pipeline yourself. It's a little more resource intensive, but it also can sometimes produce some very interesting results. In this case, again, a gradient boosting model was the winner in this pipeline. You can also build a pipeline that uses open source code. So in this particular one, I have a Python model. Okay, so after all of those after all of those pipelines run, then you can look at the pipeline comparison, where all of those models are then compared. And we, in this case, crown the champion model, which is the gradient boosting model that came from the SAS automatically generated pipeline. Okay, so I had the best KS statistic. All right, now, because of time, I want to share a little bit of opportunity for Q&A at the end, but let me just quickly say, okay, well, where do you go from here? We have this model built. How can we then use it to get to that completion, that culmination of the analytics lifecycle, which is an actual decision, right? Well, what we can do is register this model. I've done that earlier just by right-clicking and choosing Register Models so that it's packaged and saved in a way that it can be utilized in other places. You can kind of deploy it in a number of different locations. That's where the Manage Model application comes in, allowing you to deploy and manage models. You can also use it in a tool that we call SAS Intelligent Decisioning. So I will open this decision here. SAS Intelligent Decisioning allows us to build a decision flow that combines maybe business rules with models or other aspects, really a lot of different things to make automated decisions. So here I've actually built a decision flow that uses that model to determine a probability that a loan will default. Then based on that number, we can make kind of fork our flow here to say, all right, well, if that probability of default exceeds a certain number, then I'm going to decline the application. If that probability is acceptable, then I want to further evaluate the loan application by checking their debt to income ratio. And if that business rule passes, then I may approve the loan, and if not, I won't. So I can build this flow that I'm sure will have lots of more complicated business rules and potentially other models, but ultimately you can create a customized email message that would be written and even sent to a loan applicant to say, congratulations, you're approved, or sorry, your loan was declined because of, and then given a little explanation. So that's just one idea of where that model can end up to make that final concluding decision. Okay, with that, I better call an end to my demonstrations. So I hope with that little tour, you can see and appreciate how each of these applications that I've shown you give you that ability to take your data through that journey of the analytics lifecycle, ultimately to make a final decision. So I got 7 minutes. Tiago, I would love to hear what questions have come through and see how I can offer some help.
Yes, thank you. With that, we'll move into the Q&A segment of the webinar. Just a quick reminder on how it works before we get started. If you would like to ask a question, simply type it into the Q&A widget. I will make it pop up on your screen now. And we also ask for you to complete a survey for us. We'd love to hear your feedback. It's only 4 questions and should only take a minute to complete. That should also be popping up on your screen now. We use your feedback to shape future webinars, so we really appreciate if you fill that out. Stacey, on to our first question here.
Sorry, Tiago, can I interrupt just really quick?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, before you ask that first question, I want to just share one quick thing just as an extra resource. I neglected to do this. It will take me a half a second, well, half a minute, but here you go. I just wanted to show you that some resources that we will provide after the course. After our webinar. I want you to see that everything that I showed you here in the demonstrations is provided or taught in much more detail in what we call the SAS Viya overview course. This is free. I show you in demonstrations for each of these applications how to build the things that I showed you. So we'll give you that link to the free SAS Viya overview course where you can go in much more depth and detail. So anyway, we'll make sure that you have access to that, and I hope you'll take advantage of that free opportunity. Okay, now I'm ready. Question 1.
Thank you, Stacey. Question 1 here. Is there a way to transfer files via SFTP?
Well, I think you would just do that directly using whatever file transfer system that you want from, wherever you are, wherever the files are located in your world to the server where SAS Viya is hosted. There is obviously that simple way of doing upload in SAS Studio. You may reach some file size limitations if you're trying to upload something larger, but really it's kind of up to the administrator to configure how that's done, but data transfer can certainly be done using kind of a file transfer method of your choice.
Did you give the preface about the resources because of one of the questions that came in, or was that just something that you remembered?
Just something I forgot I was going to share.
Okay, great. We have a question here that kind of alludes to, they're looking for documentation. They're saying, I have a report that someone prepared for me joining the company. It's delivered in Excel, but the data comes from SAS Viya. I'm looking for the most efficient way to connect the two and or recreate this report in Excel, as I want to move toward automation for this report or simply refresh the data from SAS Viya. I know my company has the option to connect SAS Viya to Microsoft Excel. What suggestions do you have, and what documentation can you point me to for help with this?
Okay, actually in that course that I just showed you, that free SAS Viya overview course, there is a video or a section called Share SAS Content with SAS for Microsoft 365. So there is a demonstration that's about 14 minutes long that shows you the integration with Viya and the SAS, the Microsoft applications. So I suggest that you take a look at that video. That same video is also available on YouTube. If you go to our SAS users channel, then there is a playlist that's for SAS Viya Quick Start. And we can also provide that link in the resources afterwards. So I encourage you to watch that video, and hopefully that will help.
Perfect. Thank you. Someone's asking, does the volume of data loaded into the CAS library affect the performance of the VA report?
Well, it certainly can, but that is the advantage of CAS, is that as data is loaded into memory, then those calculations that are being done behind the scenes are done so much more quickly. So yes, you're going to see, as you get really, really large numbers, that it potentially may impact performance. But again, that's a big, it depends, right? It depends on the scale of your own system. It depends on the data. It depends on what you're trying to build in visual analytics. But if performance is an issue, then that, of course, that's something that we will work with you. SAS will work with you to try and optimize.
Thank you. Someone's asking, does SAS Viya also have an option to anonymize data before exploration?
Yes, there are some steps in SAS Studio that will allow you to mask data in a variety of different ways. So there are some, I know there's at least one, if not multiple customs, I'm sorry, not custom, but standard SAS provided steps that can mask data to anonymize it.
Thank you. Someone's saying, if my company has Enterprise Guide, are all the SAS Viya modules available?
Likely, no. Well, an Enterprise Guide is I don't quite know. You might need a little more information there, but I will say this. If you do have SAS Enterprise Guide and you have SAS Viya, you can actually use Enterprise Guide to connect to SAS Viya behind the scenes. So you can continue to work with Enterprise Guide, connecting to the SAS compute server as well as the CAS server to kind of do your standard work in Enterprise Guide, whether it's writing code or building projects. Now, I can't say if you have Enterprise Guide, then guaranteed you have SAS Viya licensed, because you could have Enterprise Guide licensed in kind of the SAS 9 world. So I can't make that connection, but can say you can use EG with Viya if you have both.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for questions today, but if we did not get to yours, we will answer all unanswered questions in our follow-up communities post. Thank you, Stacy, for your answers, and thanks to all of you for joining us. On behalf of myself, Stacy, and all of SAS, we really hope they enjoyed today's webinar. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.